Imagine a world where a single narrow road decides the fate of freedom. On one side, a sea of spears glimmering like sunrise on water. On the other, a wall of bronze that refuses to move. You hear it before you see it, the steady thud of sandaled feet. 300 hearts beating in one rhythm, every step a vow. A king with frost in his beard and fire in his eyes glances back once, not to check if anyone has followed him, but to remind himself why he cannot fail. This is not legend, this is Thermopylae. Stay with me, because what happened in that mountain pass isn't just a battle story. It's a blueprint for courage under impossible odds, a masterclass in strategy and sacrifice, and the spark that ignited an idea called the West. By the end of this episode, you'll not only know how 300 Spartans and their allies stood against the greatest empire on Earth, you'll feel the heat of the pass, smell the brine of the nearby sea, and understand why their stand still matters. In this episode, we'll journey from the politics of Greek city-states to the thunder of Persian armies, from the training yards of Sparta to the smoke-choked bottleneck called the Hot Gates. We'll build suspense step by step. As the road narrows, the odds worsen, and the choices get harder. And when we reach that last stand, you'll see why this battle echoes across millennia. The Battle of Thermopylae, 300 Spartans versus Persia. The year is 480 BCE. Persia is a world empire, a horizon-wide giant built on roads and tribute, from the mountains of Anatolia to the valleys of Mesopotamia, from Egypt's rich Nile to the stormy Aegean. And now, that voice turns west. Across the water lives a different kind of world, a quilt of fierce, proud city-states called Poleis. Athens, restless and ambitious, worships clever speech and restless minds. Corinth thrives on trade and strong ships. And then there is Sparta, laconic, severe, iron tough, where boys learn to suffer without complaint, and men learn to die without regret.
These worlds have clashed before. A generation earlier, Persian armies landed on Greek shores. On the plain of Marathon, the Athenians, farmers and craftsmen, not professional soldiers, charged like unleashed thunder and sent Persia back to their ships. The lesson cut both ways. Greece learned it could win. Persia learned it had underestimated a fractious but dangerous people. Now, Xerxes plans to settle the question forever. Picture a map studded with pens, each representing a satrapy, a province, a resource depot. The orders are simple. Gather men, gather ships, gather supplies. Bridge the Hellespont with floating pontoons. Link Asia to Europe with chains of wood and rope. Cut a canal through Athos to prevent storms from smashing the fleet against its cliffs. Let the world watch as engineering becomes conquest. Let every subject nation contribute. Medes, Persians, Egyptians, Phoenicians, Lydians, Bactrians. The army is a living continent, on the move. How many marched? Ancient sources speak in oceans, hundreds of thousands, even more. Modern estimates trim those seas into something smaller, but still vast. What matters is not a precise head count. What matters is what the march felt like to the people waiting on the other side. Unstoppable, inevitable, a shadow that lengthened as it advanced. Greece is not a nation. It's a noisy marketplace of rivalries. Athens and Sparta don't trust each other. Corinth eyes Athenian ambitions with suspicion. Theban politics drift with the winds of advantage. Yet a few leaders, a handful of voices among the clamor, see the truth. If they argue while Persia advances, they'll argue in chains. So the cry goes out for a Hellenic league, a coalition bound by necessity. Envoys hurry along coastal roads, across island harbors, through mountain passes. Some cities take Persian tokens, symbols of submission called earth and water. Others burn the envoys' bridges with defiance. The debate is not just fight or flee, but where and how. And into that debate steps a question that will shape the war. Where do you stop an empire?
Before we can answer that, you need to understand the men who will choose the place and hold it to the last. Sparta is not a normal city. It is an engine crafted to forge warriors and discipline. Spartan boys enter the agoge, an upbringing that is less a school than an apprenticeship in hardship. They learn to fight in phalanx, to speak little, to obey quickly. They are taught that the shield is the heart of the city, not because it protects the man who carries it, but because it protects the man next to him. A Spartan's armor is not a set of decorations, it is a promise. The laws are strict, the punishments sharper than iron. Luxury is suspect, boasting is mocked, cowardice is contagious and therefore unforgivable. And above all stands the unwritten code, return with your shield or on it. From this world comes a king named Leonidas, one of 2 Spartan kings, seasoned by years, steady as granite. He is not a man of speeches. He is a man who measures words like rations before a march. You cannot punch the ocean. You need a shoreline. To stop a numerically superior army, you need a place that denies them their advantage, where numbers cannot surround you, where cavalry cannot flow like water around your flanks. You need rock walls. You need a gate. Thermopylae means the hot gates, named for sulfurous springs that steam in the cool morning air. It is a narrow defile, wedged between the mountains and the sea. Sometimes the passage is only wide enough for a cart to pass. Elsewhere, a man can touch the cliff with one hand and the surf with the other. A small force can block a large one here, and if the Persian fleet can be checked offshore, then the land army and the sea arm cannot cooperate. Divide an empire's limbs, and you weaken its punch. Spartan logic admires such places. Greek strategy recognizes them.
The Hellenic League sets a plan. A fleet will take station at Artemisium, a strait watched over by storm and chance. A land force will hold Thermopylae. If the gods grant favor, and if courage holds, Greece can buy time. When the Persian envoys come asking for the ritual tokens of submission, earth and water, the answers are not uniform. Some cities yield, others refuse. In Sparta, the envoys are thrown down a well and told to fetch their tribute from the bottom. It is a line-crossing act, part defiance, part theater, part declaration that there will be no bargaining, in the shadow of the hot gates. Leonidas, however, knows defiance is cheaper than fighting. The real question is not whether to resist, but how to survive the resisting long enough for the rest of Greece to awaken. There is a complication, one born of piety and law. A religious festival is upon Sparta, and the law forbids a full campaign during its rites. Sparta can send a vanguard, but not the full might of its citizen soldiers. Laws preserve the customs that make Sparta strong. Now they threaten to make Sparta too slow. Leonidas does not argue with the laws. He takes what he can. 300 Spartans, handpicked not for their youth, but for a simple, brutal criterion. Each must have a living son. Their deaths, if they come, will not end a family line. He gathers Helot attendants and armorers, allies from nearby cities, and marches north. Along the way, other Greeks answer the call. Thespians, who will surprise the world with steadfastness. Thebans, whose loyalty is complicated. Phocians, to guard a mountain path. The total is not merely 300. Thousands will stand in that pass. But the heart of the army is Spartan, and the spine of its resolve is bronze. Imagine the march. Shields polished to a dull gleam. Plumes bobbing like burning grass, the clatter of greaves against shins, the measured pace of men who have learned that good order wins more battles than good fortune. Villagers watch from doorways, murmuring prayers. Children point and whisper. Some men smile, others grow quiet.
The Spartans are not a spectacle. They are gravity walking. Leonidas consults scouts and envoys along the way. The Persian army, whatever its exact size, is massive. It consumes a countryside merely by passing. Streams run muddy behind it. Fields are stripped to stubble. And somewhere to the north, a king sits in a gilded pavilion and wonders if the Greeks will be wise enough to step aside and let the world be ruled by one hand. They will not. When the Spartan-led column reaches Thermopylae, the place looks more like a wound in the land than a road. Cliffs lean in, spray dampens shields with a salty breath. The springs lay a faint sulfur scent over everything, like a warning that the earth itself is restless. There are ruined walls from an older age, a reminder that men before them saw the same logic, fought the same battle in a different year. The pass can be strengthened. Fallen stones can be rebuilt into a low wall. The phalanx can anchor upon it. Leonidas sets men to work. Shields are stacked. Meals are rationed. Scouts sent up the slopes. Phocians take position on a path that threads above the pass, the Thermopylae, because every narrow gate has a keyhole somewhere in the mountains, and every defender fears the lock being turned by a quiet hand in the night. The plan is simple because it must be. Stand shoulder to shoulder, absorb the first blow, then return it with interest. Rotate ranks to keep men fresh. Use the narrow ground to channel the enemy where you want him. Break momentum with discipline. Let numbers bleed into the sea. Dust appears first, a brown smudge over the horizon that grows into a stain against the blue. Then the flicker of metal, the bright plank edges of wagons, the long tails of cavalry standards. 1,000 languages blend into one sound: marching. Refugees stream past, eyes wide, goods abandoned, the roads clog.
And finally, the advanced elements of the Persian host see which stands before them, a stone wall patched by determined hands, and behind it, men with crimson cloaks who look like they've come to do a job, not to discuss it. Messengers approach with terms. The great king prefers submission to slaughter. Lay down your arms, the envoys say, and you will live under the benevolent shadow of Persia. Think of order, of shared wealth, of roads that connect all cities, of peace enforced by a single will. Leonidas gives an answer whose words will travel farther than any army. Come and take them. What happens next is not merely tactics, it is a contest of minds. Xerxes, used to the flexing of massive numbers, expects the sight of his army to drain courage from the enemy, like water from a broken jug. Leonidas, used to training men to let fear pass through them like wind through reeds, expects the sight to be a test, not a verdict. The Persian camp swells along the shoreline. Tents bloom like a strange white city. Fires prickle alive at twilight. Pipes and drums carry across the water, foreign and hypnotic. Greek scouts report horsemen with scale armor, archers with recurved bows, infantry with wicker shields and long spears, and among them, elite soldiers, the Immortals, 10,000 strong, drilled and adorned, a spear point in the king's hand. There is a night before every storm. In that night, men look at their neighbors and count the things they trust, the weight of a shield rim, the steadiness of a king's posture, the patience of a plan that doesn't panic. Some stories claim that a Spartan, seeing the vastness of the Persian archers, is told their arrows will blot out the sun. His answer is laconic and perfect: "Then we shall fight in the shade." Whether those exact words were spoken, their spirit is true. A Spartan treats fear like weather. Uncomfortable, yes, but not a reason to go inside. Leonidas walks the line, speaking quietly, briefly. He doesn't promise safety, he promises purpose. The Thespians, the Thebans, the allies, all will be part of what comes.
A narrow road turns many men into few. A good commander turns a few into one. Offshore, the Greek fleet jockeys at Artemisium to deny the Persian navy free passage. Storms are the sea's politics. Luck favors the prepared. Courage needs a partner named weather. If the fleet holds, the army cannot be flanked by sea landings behind the pass. If the pass holds, the fleet has time to fight. Each front lends time to the other, like two friends sharing the same coin. But time, like courage, must be earned, and the payment is about to be demanded. Dawn. The mist hangs low, the springs breathe steam, and the world seems to exhale and hold, as if even the earth knows not to move. Persian scouts edge close, testing distances with their eyes. Drums begin, somewhere beyond sight. Orders ripple down ranks, spears tilt forward in a forest of iron. Shields rise, like a wall made of round doors to a single house. Thermopylae has become what it was always meant to be, a question. Can a narrow gate hold back a world? We are about to find out. The morning sun rises, painting the cliffs in shades of gold and red. In the Persian camp, commands echo through a sea of tents, trumpets blare, and the earth trembles under the march of thousands of feet. Xerxes has ordered his advanced troops forward, not his elite immortals yet, but Medes and Scythians, soldiers he believes can sweep aside these stubborn Greeks with sheer weight. The Persian line moves into the narrow throat of the hot gates. Spears bristle, shields overlap, and war cries ripple forward. For them, this is routine. Overwhelmed with numbers, let the tide roll. But they have never faced Spartans on ground like this. Leonidas gives no rousing speech, no flowery commands.
He simply signals, and the Spartans, shoulder to shoulder, lower their dory spears in perfect unison. The pass becomes a funnel. The Persians surge forward, but the phalanx holds, an iron wall with bronze teeth. The first clash is deafening. Shields slam, spears thrust, men scream, and the air fills with the smell of sweat, iron, and blood. The narrowness betrays the Persians. Their numbers mean nothing here. Only those at the very front can fight, and they are crushed by discipline, drilled rhythm, and Spartan calm. Each time a Persian falls, another stumbles on his body. Each time a spear breaks, a Spartan draws his Xephos short sword and continues. Hours pass, the sun climbs higher, and still the wall of Greeks does not bend. To the soldiers of Xerxes, it feels like striking stone with flesh. The Spartans do not merely resist, they counterattack with terrifying precision. They advance in sudden bursts, shoving with their shields, spearing the exposed, then retreating in flawless order before the next wave. Imagine being a Persian foot soldier, hemmed in by the cliffs and the sea. You cannot maneuver, cannot escape. The men behind you push forward, desperate to keep the momentum. But in front of you stands a line that will not move. Their eyes are calm, their rhythm unbroken. For the Spartans, this is the culmination of a lifetime of training. Every motion drilled, every response automatic. They fight as one organism, breathing and striking together. Where most armies tire, the Spartans rotate ranks. Fresh men step forward, exhausted ones step back. It is endurance warfare, designed for this very bottleneck. Xerxes, watching from his throne-like seat, cannot believe his eyes. His Medes are cut down, his Scythians broken, and still the Greeks remain.
Frustrated, Xerxes turns to his most trusted force, the Immortals. 10,000 hand-picked warriors, the pride of Persia, armored in scale, bearing wicker shields and short spears. They are called Immortals because their number is never allowed to diminish. Each fallen man is instantly replaced. To the Empire, they are invincible. The Immortals march forward, their discipline and reputation a weapon of their own. But Leonidas knows they are coming. His men stand ready. The clash is even more brutal. The Immortals press hard, trying to break through by sheer relentlessness. Their arrows darken the sky, their spears jab in coordinated thrusts. But the narrowness still betrays them. They cannot encircle, they cannot use cavalry. Their wicker shields crack under Spartan bronze, their shorter spears shatter against longer Greek dory. And again, the Spartans and their allies hold. The pass becomes a slaughterhouse.
Immortals stumble over Colin comrades, their rhythm broken, their name mocked by the reality of corpses piling high. Greek morale soars. If even Persia's best cannot pierce them, then perhaps the gods themselves favor this stand. What makes this defense so devastating is not just courage, but cunning. Leonidas uses feigned retreats, pulling his men back deliberately, luring Persians into the choke point, then wheeling about with sudden fury. The Persians, pressed by their own numbers, cannot stop in time. They are crushed like waves against a seawall. Herodotus, the ancient historian, claims that Xerxes leapt 3 times from his seat in alarm during these fights, unable to comprehend how such a small force could resist his empire's pride. By the time the sun sinks low, Persian losses are staggering. The Greeks, though not unscathed, stand bloodied but unbroken. Their line holds. The day belongs to them. When darkness falls, fires light the camps. For the Persians, it is a night of frustration, whispers, and disbelief.
For the Greeks, it is a night of weary triumph. They patch shields, mend spears, and tend to wounds, but they do not despair. Around the campfires, stories are told of how many Persians fell, of how Sparta's training turned the pass into a fortress of flesh and iron. Yet there is no arrogance, only grim resolve. They know this was only the first day. The storm will return tomorrow, fiercer and heavier. And among the cliffs and shadows, betrayal begins to stir. Every wall, no matter how strong, has a weakness. And at Thermopylae, that weakness is a mountain path, the Olympia Trail, that winds above the hot gates. If an enemy could find it, they could circle behind the defenders, turning the narrow defile into a trap. The Greeks knew of it. They stationed Phocian allies to guard it, believing the rough terrain and their vigilance would suffice. But vigilance is fragile when silver glitters in the dark. Enter Ephialtes. His name will forever be cursed in Greek memory. A local, tempted by reward and the promise of Persian favor, he approaches Xerxes with treachery in his heart. He reveals the path, offering the empire what sheer force has failed to achieve. Under cover of night, a detachment of Persian troops, perhaps the Immortals themselves, begin the ascent. Torches flicker faintly, footsteps muffled, the silence of betrayal heavier than the sound of war. The Phocian sentries, startled by the sudden advance, panic. Some resist, but most retreat up the slopes, leaving the path open. They are not Spartans. They are not trained to hold ground in the face of overwhelming odds. By dawn, the Persians are in position above the pass. Word reaches Leonidas. The enemy is coming from behind. The trap has sprung. The hot gates are no longer a gate. They are a grave.
What happens next defines Thermopylae's legacy. Leonidas gathers his allies. They know the truth. The position cannot be held indefinitely. To stay is to die. To leave is to live. But it is also to abandon the cause, to let Persia pour through unopposed. Some allies choose retreat. The bulk of the Greek army withdraws to fight another day. It is not cowardice, it is strategy. Someone must carry the warning south, prepare defenses, and continue the struggle. But Leonidas and his Spartans will not leave. Bound by law, by pride, by oath, they will remain. With them stay 700 Thespians, choosing honor over survival, and a contingent of Thebans, though their loyalty is murky and forced. Together, they form a final band of the willing. Why did Leonidas stay? Historians argue, to obey Spartan law that forbade retreat, to inspire all of Greece with an example, or simply because he knew delay was as valuable as victory. Perhaps all were true. What is certain is this: his decision turned a battle into a legend. He prepares his men with calm dignity. There is no illusion of survival. He tells them their names will be remembered, that their sacrifice will echo longer than Persian conquests. For Spartans, who believe the shield outlives the man, this is enough. As the sun rises, the Greeks march out from behind their wall. No longer content to wait, they push into the open ground of the pass, choosing attack over slow encirclement. Their purpose is not to win, it is to kill as many Persians as possible before they fall. The battle that follows is chaos forged into glory. Spears break, swords flash, shields splinter. The narrow pass fills with corpses, but the Greeks fight on, driving their enemies back again and again.
Leonidas himself falls in the melee. Ancient sources claim he fights like a lion, his death a roar that shakes his men. The Spartans rally to recover his body, knowing that to abandon their king would be dishonor beyond death. The Persians, now behind and before, close in. Arrows darken the sky once more. Shields lock, but there is no escape. The Greeks fall back to a small hill, a mound that will later become sacred. Here, surrounded, they make their last stand. Imagine it. 300 Spartans, 700 Thespians, a handful of allies, pressed on all sides, refusing to break ranks. They fight with broken spears, with swords worn to nubs, with bare hands and teeth if they must. The ground shakes with the fury of men who know they are already dead, and therefore cannot be defeated. And then, the final storm. A hail of arrows so thick that the sun itself disappears. The last defenders vanish beneath the shadow of Persia's wrath. The hot gates are silent. Xerxes surveys the carnage. He has won the pass, but at a cost that gnaws at his pride. His invincible army has been bled by a handful of Greeks, his timetable delayed, his aura of inevitability cracked. The Spartans are dead, but their message is alive. News spreads like wildfire through Greece. The story of 300 Spartans holding back the world inspires unity where politics had failed. Athens rallies, Sparta prepares, and less than a year later, at Plataea and Salamis, the Persians will find that Thermopylae was not their victory, but their warning. In time, the mound where the last stand occurred becomes a memorial. Upon it, an inscription is carved, words as eternal as bronze. Go tell the Spartans, strangers passing by, that here, obedient to their laws, we lie.
A simple epitaph, but one that binds eternity to sacrifice. The pass has fallen, but the war is far from over. Across the Greek world, word of Thermopylae spreads with the speed of fire leaping from torch to torch. Traders whisper it in marketplaces, sailors tell it in harbors, and mothers repeat it to children as both a warning and a prayer. What they hear is not just defeat. They hear of 300 Spartans who fought until the last man, of 700 Thespians who chose death beside them, of a king who stood when retreat was still possible. They hear of Persia's might delayed and bloodied, of courage that denied inevitability. For the Athenians, this sacrifice buys time. Their fleet sharpens at Artemisium and then Salamis, where ships will crash together in a storm of oars and fire. For Sparta, it becomes a story etched into the very soul of the city. For all of Greece, Thermopylae becomes proof that unity, even brief, fragile unity, can challenge an empire. Xerxes marches south, his army like a rolling plain of dust and iron. He burns Athens, takes territory, forces submission. But his aura of invincibility is fractured. The Greeks now know Persia can be resisted. The legend of Thermopylae walks beside him, whispering that the cost of conquest will be higher than the spoils. When he faces the combined Greek fleet at Salamis, his hesitation, his need for absolute victory, and his underestimation of this defiant people lead to disaster. The Persian fleet is broken on the sea, and the tide begins to turn. Thermopylae is more than a battle. It is a metaphor that transcends its time. 300 Spartans did not stop Persia forever, but they stopped the idea that freedom could be crushed by sheer weight.
For centuries, generals, poets, and statesmen will look back to this mountain pass. They will see not numbers, but courage. Not defeat, but immortality. Thermopylae becomes a mirror in which each age sees its own struggles.
When the modern world speaks of fighting against impossible odds, it is Thermopylae they remember, whether they know the name or not. Leonidas becomes more than a man. His choice to stay, his calm command, his refusal to surrender, these turn him into a figure carved from the same stone as the cliffs of the Hot Gates. Sparta will remember him as a king who embodied their code. Greece will remember him as the man who taught them what defiance looks like. The world will remember him as the leader of the 300 who faced the shadow of empire and did not blink. And then there is the epitaph, cut into stone above the mound where the last defenders fell. Go tell the Spartans, stranger passing by, that here, obedient to their laws, we lie. It is not a boast, it is not a lament, it is a statement of fact, stark, simple, unbroken. It is the essence of Spartan discipline, of Greek courage, of human defiance, and it ensures that Thermopylae is not forgotten. And now, you've walked the pass with them. You've felt the dust of Persia's march, heard the clash of bronze, stood on the hill of the fallen. Thermopylae is more than a story. It is a reminder that courage is measured not by the odds, but by the choice to stand when standing matters. If you found this story as gripping as I did, then join me on this journey through the secrets of history. Subscribe now so you don't miss the next tale of human struggle, triumph, and tragedy. And when you're ready for another moment, when fear gripped a people and hysteria took hold of an entire colony, click the end screen to watch our episode on the Salem witch trials, mass hysteria in America. It's a story that, like Thermopylae, asks how far will people go when fear rules their hearts? Because history is not just the past, it is the mirror of our present and the map of our future.